Let's talk about something that I'm sure has crossed your mind if you've ever used an AI assistant. How in the world does it remember what you talked about yesterday, or even just 5 minutes ago? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on the tech that's turning these digital tools into something that feels, well, a lot more personal. You've been there, right? You've had this amazing, super detailed conversation with an AI. You've gotten everything just right. You come back an hour later and it's like you're total strangers. It has no idea who you are. While you're not going crazy, this digital amnesia is a real and frankly a super common frustration. So what's the deal? Well, the reason is actually pretty fundamental to how these things work. Large language models, LLMs, are what we call stateless. And that just means that outside of one single immediate interaction, they have zero built-in memory. Every single time you hit send, it's a completely blank slate. And that's a huge problem if you're trying to build a helpful assistant.
So how do we fix this? Well, that's where this really cool discipline called context engineering comes into play. And this is way more than just writing a good prompt. It's about building the entire package of information the AI needs for every single turn of the conversation. In other words, we're giving it a memory on the fly.
I absolutely love this analogy. It's perfect. A chef who just has a recipe that's kind of like the prompt can probably cook you a decent meal, sure. But a chef who has all their ingredients prepped, chopped, and ready to go beforehand, that's the context, well, they can create something truly special. And that meticulous prep work, that's context engineering. All right, let's break down how this actually works. We're going to start with the first piece of the puzzle, sessions. The best way to think about a session is as the AI's short-term workbench. It's all about managing the now of your conversation. So a session is basically just a container for one single continuous conversation. It keeps a running log of everything you and the AI have said, almost like a transcript. It's the AI's immediate working memory for whatever you're talking about right now. But, of course, there's a catch. You can't just log everything forever. As the conversation gets longer and longer, the cost and the time it takes to process all that information just goes through the roof. And even worse, the AI can start to get confused by all that old, irrelevant info, which can actually make its answers worse. It's a problem some people call context rot. So to get around this, developers use some clever tricks called compaction strategies. They might do something simple, like only keeping the last 5 or 10 turns of the conversation. Or they might just cut off the history once it gets too long. But the really smart way is to use another AI to summarize the older parts of the chat. It's kind of like a smart traveler who only packs the absolute essentials for their trip. Okay, but sessions are temporary, right? They're for the here and now. What about remembering things across different chats, maybe days or even weeks apart? For that, you need something much more permanent. And this brings us to the second and maybe even more important piece of the puzzle, memory. This is the AI's long-term filing cabinet. This slide just nails the difference between the two. A session is like that messy workbench you're using for one project. It's active, it's temporary, it's got all your notes and tools scattered around. But memory, that's the clean, organized filing cabinet where you only store the most important, finalized documents that you'll need for every future project. Now, you might be thinking, hold on, isn't this just RAG? And that's a great question. But no, they're actually quite different. RAG, that's Retrieval Augmented Generation, is like having a research librarian. It's fantastic at pulling facts from a huge library of documents. Memory, on the other hand, is like having a personal assistant. It learns about you from your actual conversations. So RAG makes an AI an expert on facts. Memory makes an expert on you. So how does this filing cabinet get organized so neatly? Well, it happens through this really slick automated process that works just like a classic ETL pipeline. Extract, transform, and load. It takes your messy, unstructured conversations and intelligently turns them into structured, useful knowledge. Let's just walk through the life of a memory real quick. First, the raw conversation is fed into the system. Then, another LLM actually reads it and extracts the meaningful bits, like, your favorite hobbies or a project you're working on. Then, and this is the key step, the system consolidates that new info with what it already knows about you. And finally, that shiny, curated memory gets stored away in a database for later. Out of all those steps, consolidation is where the real magic happens. You can think of it as an AI-powered self-editing process. It's constantly comparing new info with old memories to make sure the AI's knowledge base doesn't become a contradictory mess. It merges duplicates, updates old facts, like if you move to a new city, and basically keeps everything coherent and accurate over time.
And this memory isn't just a one-size-fits-all thing. It can be applied at different levels. User level is the one we've been talking about most, remembering your personal preferences. But there's also session-level memory, which just summarizes a single long chat so you can pick it back up later. And then there's application-level memory for shared facts that every user of an app might need to know.
Okay, I know that was a lot of technical detail, so let's bring it all back down to earth. Why does any of this actually matter for you, the person talking to the AI?
Look, the whole point of all this complicated engineering is to do one simple thing: to elevate AI from being just another stateless tool into a true, stateful assistant. An assistant that actually knows you, that adapts to you, and that, thankfully, doesn't make you repeat yourself a million times.
But, and this is a big but, making this work in the real world is incredibly difficult. It takes some serious production-grade engineering. You need rock-solid security to make sure your data is always kept private. You need incredible performance so that all this memory making is happening in the background and not slowing you down. And you need resilience so the whole thing doesn't just fall over.
So the next time you're using an AI and it remembers your favorite author or asks about that project you were working on last week, you'll know it's not magic, it's context engineering. It's this hidden art that's working behind the scenes to make that experience feel personal, persistent, and truly intelligent. And all of this brings us to one last, really interesting thought to leave you with. As these systems get better and better at remembering, the next huge challenge isn't going to be about memory at all. It's going to be about forgetting. If an AI can remember everything about you forever, the really tough question becomes, what should we, the people who build them, design them to forget?